All the springs unite with this one, both the first one and the last. When the birds are winged flowers and the flowers are singing birds. Every sun-up's like a birthday. Every sundown promised more. There are candles lit for noonday, and the darkness shines with stars. As for dying, when it's over, there'll be time to make a fuss. But for now, there's love and laughter, and the springtime is for us. Al Purdy. Al Purdy, he's still with us. His statue is in the northeast corner of Queen's Park, reminding us of how important poetry is, which of course is the reason why we're all gathered here this evening to listen to some of the world's best poets read their poetry to us. On behalf of the trustees of the Griffin Poetry Prize, Carolyn Forché, Sarah Howe, Paul Muldoon, Karen Soley, Alesh Streger, and Ian Williams, I want to welcome everybody to an evening of poetry at Kerner Hall. Now the judges, 3 judges, and this year they are Nick Laird, a wonderful Irish poet. What is it about the Irish? They have poetry in their DNA. Must be something in the drinking water, I think. Think of it. You have Yeats, Seamus Heaney, Michael Longley, and the list goes on and on. But Nick Laird is right up there with them. He's won all kinds of prizes, and he's been a wonderful judge. Anne Michaels. I'm a huge fan of Anne Michaels. Her latest book, Held, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It's a mixture of poetry and prose, and it's a must-read. So Anne is a great supporter of poetry. She's on the board of Poetry and Voice, or Les Voix de la Poésie. More about that later on in the evening. Tomaž Rositzky is a Polish poet, and the Poles are no slouches in producing poets as well. Think of Miłosz or Zamburka, and their list is a long one. Tomaž was with us as a shortlisted poet in the year 2014. Now, these judges have had to read 578 books of poetry, including 77 translations from 20 different languages. And by the way, they have had to read many of these books several times in order to whittle that 578 books down to just 5 shortlisted books, which are represented by the poets and the translators on stage tonight. And so on behalf of the trustees, I want to thank the judges for their enormous, by the way, that's more poetry than most of us would read in a lifetime. I want to thank the judges for their enormous contribution to this year's prize. Now, the judges are going to introduce the poets who will speak for 10 minutes each, following which there'll be a brief intermission. So I'm going to ask Tomaž Rositzky to come up and introduce our first reader. Tomaž.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening. It's a big pleasure to be here, this time as a jury member, and for this special event, special night. I have to admit that it was one of the biggest challenges in my life. And after 500 read poetry books. I started to hate poetry, but tonight I love it again. So I will introduce for you the first of our great poets, translators. Aaron Coleman is a poet, translator, educator, and scholar of the African diaspora. He is the recipient of fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, Cave Canon, the Fulbright Program, and the American Translators Association. His debut poetry collection, Treat Come Close, was the winner of the Great Lakes Colleges Association New Writers Award. And he published recently second book, Red Wilderness. Aaron, if I am mistaken something, you can correct me. And he is a translator of the wonderful book of Afro-Cuban poet Nicolás Guillén, The Great Zoo. He will present tonight. And he teaches and works at the University of Michigan. Please welcome Aaron Coleman.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's beautiful to be here. I've been saying the phrase I've been using all week has been an international, intergenerational community of poetry lovers. And it's beautiful to be here and to honor the great poet Nicolás Guillén. So I'll read a few poems from my translation of The Great Zoo. And all you really need to know as a preface is that in The Great Zoo, every poem is an animal in a cage. But those animals range from everything, as we'll soon see, from the Mississippi and Amazon rivers, the KKK, the North Star, a guitar, clouds. Now I'll let the poems speak for themselves. And I'll also read Nicolás Guillén's Spanish first, and then mine for at least a few of them. Guitarra. Fueron a cazar guitarras bajo la luna llena y trajeron esta, pálida, fina, esbelta, ojos de inagotable mulata, cintura de abierta madera, es joven, apenas vuela, pero ya canta cuando oye en otras jaulas aletear sones y coplas. Los sones hombres y las coplas solas. Hay en su jaula esta inscripción: cuidado, sueña, guitar. They went out hunting for guitars underneath the full moon, and they brought back her, pale, fine, lithe, ceaseless mulata eyes, a waist of open wood. She's young, just barely flies, but already she sings when she hears in other cages the flittering wings of sones and coplas, his somber sones and her lonely coplas. On her cage is this inscription: caution, she dreams. Let's see. Thanks, y'all. And you don't have to, we'll keep them flowing. But I appreciate that love, really for Guillén, more than anything. Los ríos. He aquí la jaula de las culebras. Enroscados en sí mismos, duermen los ríos, los sagrados ríos. El Mississippi con sus negros, el Amazonas con sus indios, son como los sunchos poderosos de unos camiones gigantescos. Riendo, los niños les arrojan verdes islotes vivos, selvas pintadas de papagayos, canoas tripuladas y otros ríos. Los grandes ríos despiertan, se desenroscan lentamente, engullen todo, se hinchan, a poco más revientan y vuelven a quedar dormidos. The rivers. Here is the serpent's cage. Coiled up on themselves, the rivers, the sacred rivers, sleep. The Mississippi with its blacks, the Amazon with its Indians, they are like the powerful springs of gigantic trailer trucks. Laughing, children toss them, little green living islands, parrot-painted jungles, manned canoes, and other rivers. The great rivers wake up, uncoil themselves slowly, gobble down everything, swell almost to bursting, and then go back to sleep. This next poem I'll read is Clouds, The Clouds. And only because it's long, I'll just read my translation. The Clouds. The Cloud Sanctuary. Capacity, 84 clouds. A new experience because there are clouds from sunup to sundown and from many different countries. Management forecasts more. Lanky-tongued like a bird, reddish, the daybreak clouds, made by the farmer's brief dreams and hollow dawns. Restrained, made of dry and firm cotton, the motherly, immovable noonday ones, like serpents in flames, the ones that announce the evening star. A curiosity, there are some from Uganda, driven by winds from the Great Lake Victoria, some from El Turquino, lying low, some from the Maritime Alps, some from Pico Bolivar, black with heavy breasts, those of the storm. Romantic clouds too, like, for example, those that fog up the sky of love, the rosy-colored ones from 60 years ago, and the Christmas cards, clouds with angels, clouds the shapes of titans, of well-known maps, England, of kangaroos, lions, in brief, a respectable load. However, these polar breeds, extremely rare, there was no way to bring them back alive. They arrived in brine, express from Greenland, Norway, Newfoundland. Management has promised to exhibit them behind glass for the public. Wild, right? You know? When I came across these, he just opened up new rooms in my mind. I am forever grateful to Nicolás Guillén. So I'll read just maybe two more here. Let's see. This next one, this one's fairly intense. It's called Gorilla. Gorila. El gorila es un animal a poco más enteramente humano. No tiene patas, sino casi pies. No tiene garras, sino casi manos. Le estoy hablando a usted del gorila del bosque africano. El animal que está a la vista, a poco más, es un gorila enteramente. Patas en lugar de pies y casi garras en lugar de manos. Le estoy mostrando a usted el gorila americano. Lo adquirió nuestro agente viajero en un cuartel para el Gran Sol. Gorilla. The gorilla is an animal all but entirely human. It doesn't have paws, but quasi-feet. It doesn't have claws, but quasi-hands. I am talking to you about the gorilla of the African forest. The animal you see here is all but entirely gorilla. Paws instead of feet, and quasi-claws instead of hands. I am showing you the American gorilla. It was acquired by our emissary abroad at an outpost for the Great Zoo. And I'll just close here with one more poem, The North Star, La Estrella Polar. Se descongela sin remedio la estrella polar, 10 millones y aún más diarios de toneladas, hielo, luz fría, gas, pierde de su estructura este inmenso animal. En los sitios vacíos verán, miren ustedes hacia allá, cómo nuestro equipo restaurador va colocando masas de algodón. Pero eso no puede bastar y dentro de 4 siglos a lo sumo los navegantes tendrán que andar a tientas por el mar. ¡Qué responsabilidad! El animal que más nos cuesta y el que menos se puede conservar. The North Star. It's melting helplessly, the North Star. 10 million or even more tons every day. Ice, cold light, gas, waste away from the frame of this immense animal. You will see, if you look just over there, how our team of conservators keeps putting puffs of cotton in the empty spaces. But this won't be enough. And within 4 centuries at most, navigators will have to blindly feel their way across the sea. What responsibility! The animal that costs us most and the one we can conserve the least. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, and I wonder if that great zoo, there is a special cage dedicated to this monster called poetry. And the second of our shortlisted authors tonight is Brian Henry. He's a poet and translator, essayist, author of 11 books of poetry, among them Permanent State, Static and Snow, Doppelganger, Wing Without Birds. His poetry is translated into 8 languages, and he's the author of several translations of Slovenian poetry, like Aleš Debeljak and Aleš Steger. He translated as well Tomaž Šalamun book, Kiss of the Eyes of Peace, he's presenting tonight. He was honored twice by the National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, a Howard Foundation Fellowship, the Best Translated Book Award, the Carol Weinstein Poetry Award, the Alice Faye de Castagnola Award, and he works and teaches literature and creative writing in Richmond. Please welcome Brian Henry.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here with these incredible poets and translators. Tomaž Šalamun was actually a judge for the Griffin Prize about 25 years ago, and he would love to be here as well. And I met Tomaž when I was 25 years old, and we became great friends, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. So being here for this book means everything to me. And I'm reading from the Griffin, specially bound Griffin book, so I just thought it was so special looking. Jonah. How does the sun set? Like snow. What color is the sea? Wide. Jonah, are you salty? I'm salty. Jonah, are you a flag? I'm a flag. All the fireflies are resting. What are the stones like? Green. How do little dogs play? Like the poppy. Jonah, are you a fish? I'm a fish. Jonah, are you a sea urchin? I'm a sea urchin. Listen to the murmur. Jonah is the roe rushing through the forest. Jonah, am I watching the mountain breathe? Jonah, are all the houses? Have you heard about the rainbow? What is dew like? Are you asleep? Lacquer. Destiny rolls me, sometimes like an egg, Sometimes it stomps me on the shore with its paws. I scream, struggle. I pledge all my juice. I must not do this. Destiny can extinguish me. I've already felt it. If destiny doesn't blow on our soul, we freeze in an instant. I spent days in a terrible fear that the sun wouldn't slip away anymore, that this is my last day. I felt how the light slid from my hands, and if I didn't have enough quarters in my pocket, and Mecca's voice wasn't gentle and kind and concrete and real enough, my soul would escape my body, as it will someday. You must be kind with death. Everything is together in a moist dumpling. Home is where we're from. We're alive only for an instant, until the lacquer dries. Folk song. Every true poet is a monster. He destroys the voice and the people. His singing builds the technology that destroys the earth so that the worms don't eat us. A drunkard sells his coat. A scoundrel sells his mother. Only a poet sells his soul to separate it from the body that he loves. Perfection is always circular, not pointed. A triangle is really circular, which is why it brings such peace. Sometimes it seems like history is stretching out an arm. This isn't true. History doesn't have that power. History. Tomaž Šalamun is a monster. Tomaž Šalamun is a sphere rushing in the air. No one knows his orbit. He lies down in twilight. He floats in twilight. The people and I look at him, astonished, hope for the best. Maybe he's a shooting star. Maybe he's a divine punishment, a boundary stone for the world. Maybe he's such a dot in outer space, he'll give the planet energy when oil, steel, and food run out. Maybe he's only a game of cells, a boil, and we need to tear off his head like a spider. But then something would suck up Tomaž Šalamun, probably the head. More likely the head than the body. From the head, new legs would grow. We probably need to squeeze him between glass, photograph him, and put him in formaldehyde so that children will look at him like fetuses, sea nymphs, and human fish. Doorkeepers would speculate with tickets and sell them twice. This is good for people because it gives them a living. Next year, he'll probably be in Hawaii or in Ljubljana. In Hawaii, it's very warm. People go barefoot to the university. The waves are up to 100 feet high, constantly jolting the land. Profiteers rush around town. The place is fantastic for love because there's salt in the air and a mild wind. But in Ljubljana, people say, look, this is Tomaž Šalamun. He went to the store with his wife Maruška to buy milk so they'd have milk to drink. And this is history. Imperialism tears off my head. In the morning, when I wake up, I feel that a monster was translated, that it dissolved, dismantled, and translated itself. I can no longer call it back. It lies on the other side, lazy, a pig. I can no longer call it back. You no longer eat grass. The meadow was burned by a welding machine. You no longer eat my mouth and sound. You no longer lick my ears, baby. You no longer breach the sun. You're full, but you feed on a certain interplanetary contingent of swamp husks. Light the fires, good people of the world. Light the fires. Before the frost, warm the fields with prayers that the Slovenian language not be extinguished. Put a hand on my forehead, Maruška. Be gentle with me, good spirit. I enchanted you in the open and loved you with the head of a god, but you got scared, bride. I enthroned you, a king, gave you ships and battles, built you a road to the Hittites, but you were afraid an elephant would trample you on the way. Shrunken, dried up monkey, deserter, technician, you were frustrated by the small background. Lingua franca gives me air. Lingua franca gives me shelter. Lingua franca anoints me with oil. Lingua franca strikes the souls of people like lightning so that I step in and eat, so that I step in and eat and enchant and indulge. Lingua franca tears my head out of this hole where fat builds up around my body, where sparks can no longer break through. Be beautiful, be brave, my language. Embrace me, hold me, be on my skin completely. radiate energy without these shackles. Ships. I'm religious as the wind or scissors. An ant eats, she's religious, the flowers are red. I don't want to die. I don't care if I die now. I'm more religious than the dust in the desert. The mouth of a child is round. My eyes are syrup dripping cold. Sometimes I think nettles stung me, but they didn't. Sometimes I think I'm miserable, but I'm not. I'm religious. I will throw a barrel into the river. If bees rushed into my face, I'd scratch at them with my hand and would see again. I don't get upset. The soul presses like the crowds at the door. When I die, oxen will graze the grass just like this. Houses will glimmer just like this. And the last poem is called The Fish. I'm a carnivore, but a plant. I'm God and man in one. I'm a pupa. Humanity grows from me. I have a perfectly spilled brain, like a flower, so that I can love more. Sometimes I put my fingers in it and it's warm. Wicked people say that other people drown in it. No, I'm a belly. I welcome travelers in it. I have a wife who loves me. Sometimes I get scared that she loves me more than I love her, and I'm miserable and depressed. My wife breathes like a little bird. Her body relaxes me. My wife is afraid of the other guests. I tell her, no, don't be afraid. All the guests are single, and for all of us. A white match with a blue head has fallen into my typewriter. My nails are dirty. Now I'm mulling over what I should write. One neighbor lives here. Her children make a lot of noise. I'm God, and I calm them down. At 1, I'll go to the dentist, Dr. Mena, Kaye Relo. I'll ring the bell and tell him to pull out my tooth because I'm in too much pain. I'm happiest in sleep and when I write. The masters pass me from hand to hand. This is necessary. This is as necessary as for a tree that's growing. A tree needs soil. I need soil so I don't go insane. I'll live for 450 years. Rebazar Tars has already lived for 600 years. I don't know if he was in that white coat because I can't tell them apart yet. When I write, I have another bed. Sometimes I flow more like water because water loves the most. Fear hurts people. A flower is softest if you put a palm on it. The flower enjoys the palm. I enjoy everything. Yesterday, I dreamed my father bent down to Harriet. I get scared of other women, and that's why I don't sleep with them. But the distance between God and young people is small. And God, there's always one woman, and this is my wife. I'm not afraid that the guests will tear me apart. I can give them everything, but it still grows back. The more I give, the more it grows. Then it floats away to help other creatures. On one planet, there's a collection center for my flesh. I don't know which one. Whoever drinks from it will be happy. I'm a tube. I'm God because I love. I have everything dark here, inside, nothing outside. I can illuminate any animal. I'm starving. When I hear the juices in my body, I know I'm in grace. I'd have to consume money night and day if I wanted to build my life, but it still wouldn't help. I'm made for this, to shine. Money is death. I go out to the terrace. From there, I see the entire landscape up to Dolores Hidalgo. It's warm and soft like in Tuscany, but it's not Tuscany. I sit there with Metzga and look. The sun sets and we still sit and look. She has arms like Shakti. I have a face like an Egyptian animal. Love is everything. Moses' basket never crashed on the rocks. Small horses walk out of the flat landscape. Wind is blowing from the Sierras. I go into people's mouths head first and kill them and give birth. Kill and give birth because I write. Thank you.
It's lovely to be here. I'm Nick Laird, and I was pleased to learn from Scott Griffin, a wonderful Irish poet. So I'm going to introduce Durs Grünbein and Karen Leeder briefly. Durs Grünbein, a major German poet whose poetry and prose have been translated into multiple languages, including Russian, Italian, English, French, Spanish, Swedish, and Japanese. His book, Ashes for Breakfast, Selected Poems, translated by Michael Hoffman, was shortlisted for the Griffin in 2006. Several of his works, including Childhood in the Diorama, The Doctrine of Photography, and Porcelain, Poem on the Downfall of My City, have won awards in Karen Leeder's English translations. Karen Leeder is the Swartz Taylor Chair of the German Language and Literature at the University of Oxford. In 2023, she began a 3-year Einstein Fellowship at the Free University of Berlin for her project Afterwards. Grünbein's Psyche Running is a brilliant overview and selection of a poet who satisfies, in Philip Larkin's phrase, our hunger to be serious, as again and again he finds himself between words and things. Karen Leeder's adept translations establish a new version of Grünbein in English, universal, lyrical, philosophical. Please welcome Durs Grünbein and Karen Leeder.
Thank you, Nick. It's fantastic to be here with so many amazing poets and translators. I'm going to start with a poem, Childhood in the Diorama, which was the first poem I translated of Durs, who, I'm pleased to say, is alive and here. Childhood in the Diorama. Strange, as a child, he was always drawn to the inert. In museums, he'd stand for ages at the diorama, its animals ranged in natural groups, stock still against the painted backdrops, forests, Himalayas. Enchanted, as in a fairy tale, the deer pricked up its ears as he edged closer in the neon eyes shining. In the skull of the caveman next door, he saw only the gaping hole, couldn't imagine the blow of his rival's club, the struggle for the fire. The Egyptian mummy had lasted thousands of years with its brain spooled out. Only with the melting of the perma-ice had this mammoth come to light. The most beautiful butterflies, big as your hand, he found skewered with pins. Once, he thought he saw their wings still quivering, as if in memory of the trees that had been felled, the tropical winds. A draught, perhaps, had blown through the displays.
Don't be afraid. Poetry is only a short injection. And I think it may be heard, but it doesn't hurt really. It's, I think, all about healing and all about understanding. And I wish Tomaž Šalamun could be here. He was really a great poet. You could hear it before. Now I will read some lines in this strange language of German. Die Wachtel, ach Großmutter, so nah am Wasser gebaut. Beim Abschied riss sie mich jedes Mal an sich. Mit der plötzlichen Kraft der Ertrinkenden, in ihrer Blumenschürze eine so kleine Person. Wie bestürzend rasch all das vorüber war, die Jahre der Rosenzucht, Jahre am Spülstein. Sie war die agile, die schwatzhafte, zärtliche. Als sie starb, war ich, wer weiß wie weit weg. Dieses Ach aber, überhaupt jede Art Seufzer, wurde in ihren Kreisen geradezu kultiviert. Welche Kreise, die Damen vom Romy-Club, das Kaffeekränzchen jeden Mittwochnachmittag. Sie schämte sich immer der Stunde 0, als Frau der Russen wegen, ihrer Befreier. Spät nachts hatten sie ihr die Tür eingetreten, die Kinder waren zum Glück auf dem Lande. Diese letzten Tage des Krieges, sie blieben versiegelt ein Leben lang unter Verschluss. Wie in der Kommode unten das Bündel Briefe, die fleischfarbenen Wäschestücke der jungen Braut. 50 Jahre lang hielt das Familiengeheimnis, kein Sterbenswörtchen, erst kurz vor dem Ende, in den Wochen der Krankheit, packte sie aus. Großmutter, eine geborene Wachtel aus Schlesien. Die Wachtel, ein Speisevogel zu Goethes Zeiten. Es hieß, das kommt bei uns nie auf den Tisch. Heute noch zucke ich manchmal zusammen, schwärmt man von Wachteleiern als Delikatessen. Oder ein Wort weht herüber, eine brüchige Silbe, die eine schwach macht, weil sie so vieles enthält. Überhaupt die Erhaltungssätze der Sprache. Dasselbe Ach in Fachwerk wie in Kasachstan. So nah am Wasser gebaut, ich kann sie noch hören, ihre Seufzer, die Tiefen, die Lebenssatten und jene Schwachen, behutsam eingeschlagen, wie in Seidenpapier zwischen zwei kleinen Lachern. Karen, please.
The title of this poem, as you heard, Die Wachtel, refers to the name, but also it's a bird in German, it's a quail, as will become evident. And the question was whether to call it the quail, but there's nobody in the London telephone book called quail. Maybe quail is a common name in Canada, but it isn't where I come from. So, Nee Wachtel. Ach, grandmother, always on the brink of tears. When I was leaving, she would always clutch me to her with the sudden strength of the drowning, standing like a stick in a flowery apron. And how bewildering, how quickly it was all gone. The years of rose growing, years at the sink. She was so sprightly, the gossip always so kind. When she died, I was away, who knows where. That ach, though, in fact, any kind of sigh was cultivated in those circles of hers. What circles? The ladies of the Rummy Club, coffee together every Wednesday afternoon. Remembering 45, she was filled with shame on account of the Russians, her liberators. They'd battered down her door late one night. The children, thank God, were in the country. Those last days of the war remained sealed within her for a lifetime under lock and key, like the bundle of letters downstairs in the dresser, the flesh-coloured silks of the young bride. 50 long years the family secret held, not a single word, right until the end. Then, in her last weeks of illness, she began to speak. Grandmother, nee Wachtel from Silesia. Wachtel, already a game bird in Goethe's day. At home, the golden rule, it was never served. And still today, I find myself disturbed when I see quail's eggs prized as a delicacy. Or a word on the breeze, that fragile syllable that makes one tremble, it holds so much. The conservation laws of language in action, the same ach in Valach as in Kazakhstan. Always on the brink of tears, I still hear her sighs, the deep ones fed up with life, and those slight ones carefully wrapped as if in tissue paper between two small smiles. On learning old vocabulary, words don't sleep in dictionaries. They kick about aimlessly on street corners, play with munitions like kids that carry war inside even when it's done. We never would have guessed, Herr Nobel, that dynamite might make them interchangeable material, morality, modern art. Particles that went flying from that day, articles in all the scientific journals, thousands per subject, a desert track of knowledge, and the great gulf between this and that meaning of devotion, the satellite pictures of delirium or democracy. Who did this? Who destroyed it all? The baby face that breathed in smog and blew it out as a cloud of gold dust. It's down to him who sold the dawn for scrap. Don't stop the dictation, you poets. Words don't sleep. Poems about poetry. Asked what it is. The huge scar-pocked palm leaf outside the papeterie in Papeete, the bikini billboard at the bus station of a busy mining town in Bohemia, the moment's hesitation in the photo studio. How did I come to appear in this light? The philologist's pink index card, his commentary on a line from the Iliad, letters that the lazy postman left behind in a sack labelled the Azores. Now, it's turned out different after all, so different from what we imagined in our evening courses. No idea who it is will one day give the speech to summon up an army of heroes. Fighting machines were the latest hit when our children's children still went to the movies. What now? What should I do with my days with the World Exposition long since gone? Discovered by divers far from the coast, a yellow pianola at the bottom of the sea, the calm of images thick with dreams in the banana republic of the real. And to close, a poem that for a long time gave its title to the book, which is now called Psyche Running. I'm going to read it in English and then Durs will finish in German. From a book of weaknesses. Gigantic agenda, this life of ours, that turned out so different then, after all the same. We picture ourselves when we close our eyes in a lift that's counting the years in floors. Often one of us gets out midway, walks along a corridor towards himself, his own doppelganger. The half of it is stumbling, knocking on the wrong door, the one with the painted-on heart, and then this collapsing with fatigue, the relief. Day after day, another petal falls from the crazy bouquet that only yesterday almost made the vase explode with its splendor. Blue hydrangea, wood anemone, black tulip. Sounds like some kind of improvisation, exercises for a toy piano, unbound line of verse. And this unboundness means we're dying imperceptibly. And suddenly we are glad to live as if we were immortal, while writing stems the flow and every single word is crucial. So now begin. Write a book of your daily weaknesses. Thank you.
We are exaggerating. I see the timeline. Okay. Yeah, one of the notebooks aus einem Buch der Schwächen. Gigantische Agenda, dieses Leben, das so ganz anders kam und dann doch so. Wir sehen uns, wenn wir die Augen schließen, in einem Fahrstuhl, der die Jahre wie Etagen zählt. Oft steigt einer mittendrin aus, läuft auf sich zu, den Flur hinab, sein eigener Doppelgänger. Die Hälfte ist Stolpern, an falsche Türen klopfen, weil von außen ein Herz aufgemalt ist und dann dies Niedersinken vor Müdigkeit, das so gut tut. Von Tag zu Tag fällt nun ein Blütenblatt aus dem irren Blumenstrauß, der die Vase gestern beinahe zum Explodieren brachte in seiner Pracht. Blaue Hortensie, wilde Anemone, schwarze Tulpe, das klingt alles nach freier Improvisation. Etüden für ein Spielzeugklavier, haltloser Vers. Und Haltlosigkeit heißt, wir sterben unmerklich und plötzlich macht es uns Freude, so zu leben, als ob wir unsterblich wären. Während Schrift uns eindämmt und jedes einzelne Wort ist zentral. Nun fang an, schreib ein Buch deiner täglichen Schwächen.
My name is Anne Michaels. Poetry is a solidarity, a witnessing, insurrection, resurrection, insubordination, consolation, a provocation, a seduction, a harrowing, a message left for the others. A poem that is alive, never leaves us behind, always takes us with it into its cry, its wound, its peace, into these times, this place, this present moment, this irrefutability. In its singularity, it speaks to all. No matter when you encounter a poem, it reaches you in the middle of your life. Always urgent, always here, always now. It can be an ambush, like love, or the glint of a knife on a dark road, because it always asks what matters most. It has been a profound privilege to serve as a judge this year and to work with Tomaž and Nick Laird. Thank you on behalf of the judges to Scott and Christine Griffin for their faith in poetry, for their incredible ongoing support of this prize and of poetry and voice. Congratulations to all the poets and translators on stage tonight and to all the long-listed poets, and gratitude to every poet whose books were submitted this year. Carl Phillips has written 17 books of poetry, most recently the book we will hear from tonight, Scattered Snows to the North. And he has won many, many awards and fellowships, including the Pulitzer Prize for his selected poems 2007 to 2020. It is my very, very great pleasure to introduce Carl Phillips tonight and his book, Scattered Snows to the North. It is Phillips' mastery that these poems measure, weigh, question, prevaricate. It seemed, maybe, we weren't afraid nor unafraid. And it is Phillips' magic that this diction renders greater precision, not less, an astonishing accuracy in naming the spaces from which our comprehension, acceptance, farewells, memories emerge and submerge again. Phillips has found a way to articulate love in all its assertions and disguises, calibrated in all its doubt, tenderness, forms of desire, loyalty, solitudes. He writes, I keep making the same avoidable few mistakes that I've always made, and then regretting them, and then regretting them less. How grateful the reader is to enter and re-enter these profound poems, to be entered by them. For in their articulation of what is most elusive, what we can't understand yet somehow know, in their recognition of unanswerable human limitation, is a kind of forgiveness. Please welcome Carl Phillips.
Thank you, Am, for that introduction, and it's a great honor to be here. Thank you, everyone. This poem is called Regime. As I took off my clothes, I watched him taking his own off. The sound of rain was for once not the sound of wind shaking the rain steadily loose from a stand of river birch. It's hard to believe in them, the beautiful colors of extinction. But these are the colors. Before all of this, and as usual, early summer seems already to hold inside it the split fruit of late fall, those afternoons whose diminished music will soon enough lie down in, surprised a little, to feel it all surprised. Meanwhile, how the wind sometimes makes the slenderest trees, still young, bend over, makes me think of knowledge conquering superstition. I can almost believe in that until the trees, like fear, spring back. Then a sad sort of quiet just after. It's between two people who have finally realized they've stopped regretting the same things. It's like they've never known each other. Yet, even now, waking, they insist they've woken from a dream they share, forgetting all over again that every dream is private. Whatever the reasons are for the dead under branches of the trees that flourish here, that the dead persist is enough. For me, it's enough. The air stirs like history, like the future, like history. This is the title poem called Scattered Snows to the North. Does it matter that the Roman Empire was still early in its slow unwinding into never again? Then, as now, didn't people burst into tears in front of other people or in private for no reason that they were willing to give, or they weren't yet able to, or for just no reason? I've never stopped missing you, I used to practice saying, for when I'd need those lines, as I assumed I would, given what I knew then, nothing really, about things like love, trust, the betrayal of trust, and a willfulness that's only deepened inside me all these years, during which I can almost say I've missed no one, though it hurts to say it. Honestly, the Roman Empire, despite my once having studied it, barely makes any sense to me now, past the back and forthing of patrolled borders as the gauge and proof of hunger's addictive and erosive powers. But there were people, of course, too, most of them destined to be unremembered, who filled in their drawn lives anyway, because what else is there, to where the edges gave out. If it was night, they lit fires, presumably. Tears were tears. It's scary to have this box telling you how much time you've got left. But I'm paying attention. All right, this is called Like So. From attention to adoration is a smallish distance, and yet no arrow, no boat with sail can cross it, like the mind's insistence. We'd reached the marshes by then that all the dead must come to. I could see my face tilted there, like a solar eclipse viewed indirectly, which is the proper way in a basin of water. You must hold it steady, keep the basin safe from the wind's reach, its competing powers of revelation and distortion. Thicket. Some memories stay, like fallen throwing stars left to lie there. Most disappear. Whatever distinguished them, rubbed smooth by dailiness, glass into sea glass from the sea's tumbling. like looking violence for once straight in the face and watching it turn, if not gentler, then differently violent, and telling yourself that's not nothing at least, and calling it eros. But violence has no face. That's just words into pictures again. And eros, please. You can make the stars spell out anything if you stare long and hard enough. What part of didn't you wish for this aren't you getting, for example? Or it's a quiet night, quiet the way the animals here east of touch but slightly north still of penetration live mostly quiet. Most disappear. Fist and palm. There are plenty who'd hardly recognize me now. I used to be that cruel, by which I mean I was frightened mostly, and now I'm mostly not. Joy, if only flickeringly, each day astounds me. The man I used to be dismounts, relents for a bit, before digging his boots, streaked with longing, my own longing, what I can't help, hard into my sides again, into the man I've become. His way of reminding me we've only stopped for rest, a short rest, some water. We've years to go still. He has his job, I have mine. Speechlessness is not an option, he whispers into my ear. He spits on the words themselves after, as if to make them stay, or just to make sure I'm listening. But I'm always listening, as I always obey. Isn't this obedience? These songs I've built from things too difficult to speak of? And I'm going to finish with this poem called Rehearsal. By then, the point of the forest was the getting through it. Then it lay behind them, all but its sharper details, flies licking at dried blood, I think, on a random tree stump, getting swiftly lost. Its muffled bird song, too, that had come less, it seemed, from the trees than from beneath mostly, as if somewhere deep, deep inside the earth. Maybe meeting you has been the one good reason I lasted so long in a world that must eventually not include me, I almost said to him. Past the forest, the shore, where the land ended, where briefly the waves hitting it seemed the latest example of how squandering momentum can become routine, while upon the waves, the taken for grantedness of shadow play seemed its own example, how one way to prove power can be to quietly assume it. Then, except for offshore, where the dark lay like defiantly a ship at anchor, everything was itself, as it always had been. They took off their shoes, their clothes. They swam out to the dark ship. Thank you.
Diane Seuss is the author of 6 poetry collections, including Frank, Sonnets, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and the Penn Volker Award. Still Life with Two Dead Peacocks and a Girl, a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award and the Los Angeles Times Prize, and Four-Legged Girl, a finalist for the Pulitzer. Several years ago, when I was still teaching at NYU, I was complaining about the timidity and boringness of American poetry to my friend Terence Hayes, the poet, who told me to immediately get up and go out and buy Diane Seuss's Still Life with Two Dead Peacocks and a Girl. I did, and it took the top of my head off. It was amazing, bracing, restorative. Her new book, modern poetry is the culmination of a life spent learning the art of locating, in her phrase, the beauty of drawing near, of seeing through time. And her wry, compelling tone and effortless technique end in something very like wisdom. She is an indispensable poet. Please welcome Diane Seuss.
Hey, everybody. My mouth. First time I've exposed my lips in about 6 years. In a crowd, that is. Thank you. I am breathing you in, come what may. Thank you for being here. I'm in awe of these people behind me, and that I'm sitting among them in this place. How'd that happen? Being who I am and where I'm from. Juke. What kind of juke do you prefer? For me, it's the kind with 3 songs and 37 blank title strips. 3 songs and 2 are Lukenbach, Texas. The third is beautiful and arcane, but the patrons hate it and the record skips. I prefer the 3-song juke and the 3-toothed human smile. I found the juke of my dreams in a bar called Chums. No clue the origin or meaning of the quotation marks. It was a prime number of a bar, and now it's dead. One night, drinking half and halves, half beer, half tomato juice, with schnapps chasers, a cheap source of hallucination. A soon-to-be defrocked Catholic priest, Vic Jr., and my mother and me. Our faces streaked blue with pool chalk, juke red as a beating heart, and just a strip of hollyhocks and a tree line between us and the northern lights. I was young. I looked like a Rubens painting of a woman half eaten by moths. What lucky debauchery. The ride back on a washboard dirt road, taking everything for granted, the flipping off the aurora borealis like it was some 3-toothed human in flashy clothes dancing to get my attention. I wasn't a mean drunk then, just honest. Next morning, Mom walked in on the naked priest in the shack's garage, washing himself with a rag and cold water from the well in a metal dishpan. I'd later do dishes in that pan and wash my hair in that pan. We popped popcorn on the one-burner wood-burning stove and ate it out of that pan. I'm talking about a time and a place. All I can say of it is that it was real. The song choices were limited, so the grooves were dug deep. Thank you. Romantic poetry. You're giggling. Now that the TV is gone and the music has been hauled away, it's just me here and the muffling silence a spider wraps around a living morsel. and at times, often, the unbearable. I bear it, though, just like you. Long ago, I bore a suitcase filled with books, bore it far on city streets. To sell, I guess, at some used books place, one of those doorways down steps into dankness and darkness. The scent of mildewed, dog-eared, fingered pages. The suitcase, big and square and sharp-cornered, covered in snake skin, bought at Goodwill for $1, knowing I had some traveling to do, some lugging, and I was right. What books I sold, I do not know. Maybe that's where modern poetry went, the cover cherry red and blossom white. I can see its spine in my mind's eye, pointing downward beneath the dank and the dark to the water tunneling under the city and making its way to the river. Poems sliding down the book's spine into water, the shock of the cold and dank, down where my uterine lining, my blood and cast-off ovulations, cast-off fetal tissue swims below the city. The micro-dead write modern poems like swan boats in the dark, from the park to the river to the sea. I'm thinking now of P.J. Harvey and Nick Cave, balladeers, lovers, Vita and Virginia, Frank O'Hara and Vincent Warren. Somehow we ride our lost loves out to sea, or they ride us, it doesn't matter. Poet or poem or reader, the same ectoplasm. The modern in time becomes antique, and the stone faces of the dead convert to symbols ripe for smashing. Come to think of it, symbols are terrible. As the tyrant shouted to the masses, part of his brainwashing campaign, I know it and you know it too. I was 23 when I sold off modern poetry and sailed to Italy, seeking romantic poetry, which was at one time modern, and found my way to Rome and Keats's death room. His deathbed, a facsimile, everything he touched was burned to kill what killed him. I lifted his death mask from its nail, cradled it, closed my eyes, and kissed his lips until the plaster warmed and stained his face with the lipstick on my lips, red as the cover of modern poetry. The color of the droplets of arterial blood he coughed onto his sheets and viewed by candlelight. Then he knew he was done for. His death warrant, he called it. After those many kisses over his face and eyes and the reticulated eyelashes, cold and tangled, my lips were blossom white, my face chalked, like I'd caught something from him, and I don't mean consumption. Though my lungs burned for years, they still burn. This is the danger of the ecstasy of kissing the dead or dying poet on the mouth. The disease you'll catch, it changes you. The tingle in the spine, the erotic charge will be forever married to poetry's previous incarnations. It's why marriage itself never worked for me. I kept wanting to get to the part where death parts us and I could find myself again. I'm so glad you're laughing. It's laugh or cry, you know. Keats made such a compact corpse, only 5 feet tall, shorter than Prince. and intricately made. Always he was working it out. The meaning of suffering, the world's his own, the encounter with beauty nearly synonymous with suffering, how empathy could extinguish him and he could set down the suitcase at last, or finally deliver him to himself, distinct as the waves in his hair and the bridge of his nose. How auspicious, rare, lush, bizarre, kinky, transcendent, romantic, to be young, just 23, and to cradle him in my arms as we listened to the burbling water of the Fontana della Barcaccia from the open window. Thank you. And I'll end with the tiny poem that ends my book, if I can find it. And it's also a Keatsy poem. It's called Romantic Poet. You would not have loved him, my friend, the scholar decried. He brushed his teeth, if at all, with salt. He lied and rarely washed his hair, wiped his ass with leaves or with his hand. The top of his head would have barely reached your tits. His pits reeked, as did his deathbed. But the nightingale, I said. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to the judges for those introductions, and of course a huge thank you to both the poets and the translators for a wonderful set of readings. And now for the promised intermission, during which there'll be an open bar and the poets' books will be on sale. And the poets have agreed to sign those books at the end of the evening. So the intermission will be approximately 25 minutes. Thank you.
Tonight, I think no poetry will serve. Syntax of rendition. Verb pilots the plane. Adverb modifies action. Verb force feeds noun.
What is at stake for the writer in the act of making the poem? What is risked? Which only the writer can know. A radical sincerity, radical investment, radical presence that has nothing to do with literal or anecdotal sincerity. What must be at stake must be not less than everything.
If I look up, I see the end bends down into today's eternity. I am no one. I know hell and have hope. Let me travel the M11 down to Greystones with my brother, as happy a soul as he is, and see the silver spears of towers symbolically built into the deep dream state. Let me who? Who will let me? Who am I addressing?
Îngeri bătrâni, urât mirositori, cu iz stătut în penele jilave, în părul rar, în pielea scămoșată de insule de psoriazis, hărți scrijelate adânc ale unor tărâmuri înspăimântătoare.
Arthur Rimbaud says, une seule chose est exaltante au monde, le contact avec les puissances de l'esprit, which is one thing is to be exalted or is exaltant in the world of all things, contact with the power of the spirit. And I think that all poetry is an attempt, a linguistic attempt to make contact with spirit. The spirit of the thing, the object, the experience, the moment, the memory.
Astounded, astonied, astunned, stopped short and turned towards stone, the moment filling with its slow, stratified time. Standing there, your face cratered by its gawk, you might be the symbol signifying eon. What are you?
This is called Ballade of the Poverties. There's the poverty of the cockroach kingdom and the rusted toilet bowl, the poverty of to steal food for the first time, the poverty of to mouth a penis for a paycheck, the poverty of sweet charity, ladling soup for the poor who must always be there for that. There's poverty of theory, poverty of swollen belly shamed, poverty of the diploma or the ballot that goes nowhere. Princes of predation, let me tell you, there are poverties and there are poverties.
No, I can't hear one voice pleading, but I do hear gusts coming down from the hills. No, you're wrong again. The crow perch on the totem is real. Look at how the light lifts off its wings.
Chanted in the windy cables, and the river sailed haphazard under the solitude. He had only the stories to tell, naked and plotless, the spiritual territories, each image and sky mapped, dark at the edges.
Over the centuries, we've evolved a prosody in all of our languages, prosodies, having to do with the musicality, the rhythms, the deep metaphors, the associational magic of metonymy and so on. We've perfected this art, and now all poets are born on the shoulders of those who've come before them. Odysseus Elitis has a wonderful metaphor for this, where he's floating in the sea, and the sea is language, and the raft are all the poets that have preceded him, buoying him up while he continues this great making.
Literature has often crossed borders with contraband in its backpack.
Welcome back, everyone. And now we come to a very special part of the evening. Carolyn Forché is going to present and interview this year's Lifetime Recognition winner, Margaret Atwood. And here they come on stage.
You are a magnificent audience. This is very moving for me. On behalf of all of the trustees, we choose most years to give a Lifetime Achievement Award, and this is the first time we're giving a Lifetime Achievement Award to one of our own, a founding trustee of the Griffin Prize. I would like you to, do you have memories of the beginning of the prize?
Oh, yes. You want me to talk about them?
Yes.
Okay, so David Young got hold of me, as he frequently does, because he's always filled with enthusiastic, wild ideas. And he said, "This is going to be great. This guy I know called Scott Griffin is going to do a big poetry award. And it's going to be international, and it's going to be Canadian, and it's going to be wonderful, and there will be parties and everything." And I thought, another lunatic. and you have to be a trustee. I said, oh. And so it was. So we did have trustee meetings, and they consisted of Scott telling us what to do, and us making suggestions that were rejected. But that's what that's what happens at trustee meetings, as you know.
We have
anyway, it has been astonishing. And who knew that it would keep on going for so long?
So long.
It did not falter and sink into a hole in the ground. And it came at a point when people were really quite worried about the poetic tradition, not only in this country but in some others, and we are of the generation of the 1960s in Canada when poetry was the form. So there's also a story about that statue of Alberti in Queen's Park. Another Scott doing. Who else would have
Tell
thought
us.
of that?
I don't know the story.
Oh, well, if you go to Queen's Park, you can see Al sitting there with pigeons on his head. I wrote a poem about Al in his voice, the voice of the statue, like wondering what is going on.
Why are there pigeons on my head?
Why do I have birds on my head? Never mind.
We met 45 years ago.
Is it that long?
Yes, it is that long already. It was 1980 in May. And something happened in 1980 in May on May 18th.
Don't make them guess.
The Mount St. Helens volcano erupted. And on May 23rd...
Well, first of all, we were giving a reading in Portland, and I phoned Portland and I said, should I maybe not come? Is this volcano going to be a problem? And they said, oh, no, it's not going to be a problem in Portland. The wind always blows the other way.
So on the 23rd was our reading, and Mount St. Helens erupted a second time.
And the wind changed.
And the wind changed. And the airplanes flew through the clouds, and the paint had come off of them by the time they were finished flying through it. So we were giving our reading, and the audience all wore scarves over their faces because there was a lot of silicate in the air. And
well, we looked out the window and said it's snowing, but it was not snow. It was volcanic ash, which is the silicate part, and no planes were then flying by the time we got out of the reading, and no trains were going, and no buses were going, and nobody was driving their car because it would destroy your engine. And we both had a plane to catch in San Francisco the next day. Did we make it? Yes.
When Margaret Atwood says, we're getting out of here, that's what happens. So, we drove all night, and we talked to try to stay awake. And one of the things that Margaret talked about was a book she was beginning to work on and thinking about, and she talked to me about a world that she was creating where women had lost their reproductive rights. And I thought, that doesn't sound plausible. And she insisted, oh no, it absolutely is. Everything that happens in this book has already happened historically somewhere, right?
That's true.
So I was very wrong.
Meanwhile, Carolyn on her end was telling me about life in El Salvador, which was pretty gruesome at the time, but no journalists were covering it. And I think you came up to Canada and broke the story here, because Canadian newspapers were not afraid to publish the story.
No, they were not. Thank you, Canada, for so many things right now. Thank you. She asked me, I had read a couple of poems that I wrote there about El Salvador, and in the car, as the sun was rising and we were driving into San Francisco, she asked me what I was going to do with those poems, and I told her a little nervously that I keep them in the drawer, because a poetry publisher in New York told me that I shouldn't and couldn't publish them, because they were, he used the P word,
too harsh.
They were political poems. So this was the first time she got a little harsh with me on the trip. And she said, what are you talking about? You're listening to someone who tells you you can't publish your poems? Remember that?
I do remember that, you silly person.
And so she said, I want you to send the poems right away to this address in New York. When Margaret Atwood tells you to send your work to an address in New York, you do it, yeah? So there was only one incident that night, which is when we almost hit that truck, right?
Yeah, we did. It didn't have its lights on, and it was parked by the side of the road. It was quite large. We almost ran, but we didn't run into it.
We didn't run into it.
No.
So we're alive, and The Handmaid's Tale was published, and The Country Between Us was...
And so were your poems.
Yes.
You have to put
thanks
that
to
part
Margaret
in.
Atwood. Really, thanks to her. And then you had a second great influence on my life, which was
that was terrific. I loved that part.
Well, she's responsible for The Country Between Us being published, because I probably would have left it in the drawer. Believe it or not, I leave most of my work in the drawer. But I had gotten married, and I was a little bit
I was getting a little bit up there in years. And I was 35, 35, and we were in Sitka, Alaska. And I told her, she said, do you want to have a baby? And I said, oh yes, I'd love to have a baby someday. And she said, well, you better hurry up, you know. And then I said, well, yes, I really am hoping I'll have a child. And she said, well, I know how you can get pregnant. You go ahead, you said.
Step one, we won't go into.
No.
No, I gave her my basal thermometer.
And she said, be careful, this works. And be sure that the timing is right because you will get pregnant right away. And I thought, no, I'm old. It's going to take a long time.
I think I put some probablys in there.
Well,
this will probably work. It will probably, yeah.
So it happened right away. So I have my book, The Country Between Us. I have my son born in a wonderful, timely fashion, all because of Margaret Atwood. So,
and what is your third wish for the ruby slippers?
So we've told you the funny parts, and we're honoring the poetry, her poetry tonight. There's this wonderful book, The Paper Boat, which has poems from 1961 to 2023. And I was first introduced to your work through the poems. And she was, I thought you were really, really ancient, but you were only 10 years older than me, as it turns out. So
But
she was
now I'm really ancient.
Now we're both really ancient. So she was a profound influence on all of us as a poet first, and then as a novelist. The Surfacing novel, I think, was the early one. And I felt enormously lucky as a young woman poet to meet her and to have those hours in the car all night talking, and to have all the advice that she gave me about writing. It was deeply formative for me. And she also, she was also very wise about political situation, and was very influential about that with me. And so I think I'm going to ask her for advice again now. And it might be something we all want to know. When she was interviewed by the BBC by John Wilson, do you remember this one?
He was good.
She said, one of the things that has occupied me really quite a lot is how do these dictatorships get going? And how do they maintain themselves and then fall apart? You can see it in action now, she says. It's what the right wing wants. It wants a hierarchical, Puritan theocracy. These regimes are never made out of whole cloth. They're always based on something that was there before. They change the outfits, the names, the flags, and the slogans, but it's the same infrastructure. So would you talk a little bit to us about the moment Canadians are living through in a horrible, I'm very sorry. The poets have told me to apologize to you profusely and to thank you for staying away and not buying, because it's working, I think. But would you talk to us a bit about this obsession? Because you're prophetic. You're always prophetic. You seem to know.
No. I make guesses.
Okay.
Like all of these prophets.
Good guesses.
Yeah, guesses. Informed guesses some of the time, and uninformed ones the rest of the time. So dictatorships, why am I interested in them? Because I was born in 1939, which is also the reason why I could never be a pacifist, and also the reason why I feel countries that have been invaded have a right to defend themselves. So that's the start. My story about World War II in Canada is if it hadn't been for rationing, I would be 5'9".
Really? Okay. Do you have advice for...
About eating properly or about...
No, not broccoli. How are we going to get through all of this?
Well, these kinds of intense moments cannot last forever. And one of my obsessions at the moment is the French Revolution, because it is the event that was the model for all subsequent modern revolutions, including the one in Russia, including the one in Germany, which was of a different, it had different, flags, but it was the same idea, and the one in China, and a bunch of smaller ones. So it usually begins with great euphoria. We're going to fix everything. You're going to get very rich. Heard that lately? And all we have to do is get rid of those people. So those people vary, different kinds of those people, but there's always those people. But somehow, the wonderful money flowing like water down out of the sky moment never exactly arrives. And then you start purging your own party because it has to be somebody's fault. Once you've got rid of those people and there aren't any more of those people left to blame, you've got to start discovering traitors from within. And that was why Robespierre had a head one day and didn't have one the next. Yes, he made a terrible tactical error. Do you want to know what it was? Yes. He went into the National Assembly and said, there's traitors all around. We have to root them out. We need more terror. And some of those traitors are in this very room. Ooh. And so they said, name the names. And he said, it is not yet time to name them. So, of course, everybody thought it was them, that they were on his list. And they thought, quite rightly, if we don't get rid of him, he's going to get rid of us. And they got rid of him.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You also
so I think these things have a habit of cannibalizing themselves from within once they really get going. And a really ruthless dictator who is not being invaded from without can probably hold it steady for a while. Hope you've seen the movie called The Death of Stalin. It's all true except that the movie was a bit faster than
and what happened?
Real life. Yeah. So yes, I've always been interested in it. I'm very interested in military history, and I've been following along recent developments that we have just seen. I allude to the deep penetration operation just pulled off by Ukraine. An astounding tactical victory. So yes, that's why. It's what I grew up in.
You also said to me today, I mentioned despair, and you said, despair is what they want you to do. So don't despair. And what I feel is we're in a situation where we must deny, we must say no, we must not give legitimacy. We have to refuse.
It's not too late for the United States yet.
I hope not.
And there has been a lot of pushback.
There has been.
Within the country.
But things have gotten very difficult in 3 months, very quickly.
They have gotten difficult very quickly, and that is the aim. It's what Hitler did. So you get rid of your opponents as quickly as you can, but these folks are not quite as ruthless as Hitler. We're not having the night of the long knives with real guns. We're having it with firings. And it remains to be seen how this is going to play out, but cracks are already appearing in the Republican Party's unified wall.
Thank you. I would like to ask her to read a couple of poems to us. And would you be so kind to?
I would be so kind.
She would be so kind.
One of the few occasions when I would be so kind. Okay, these poems were actually selected by Carolyn. And we have the dark one first, and then we have a less dark one, just to cheer you up and have you not go home so dejected that you jump out the window. So we have a slight problem here, which is that I have to hold the pages fairly close to my face because I can't see. It's cataract operation prequel, you know. I'm not going to be unable to see forever, just I am today. So this one is called, and at the same time I have to hold the mic. This is just slightly awkward. No, I would not like you to hold it for me because it would involve you kneeling at my feet. We'll just have to struggle along. How to tell one country from another. Whether it is possible to become lost. Whether one tree looks like another. Whether there is water all around the edges or not. Whether there are edges or whether there are just insects. Whether the insects bite. Whether you would die from the bites of the insects. Whether you would die. Whether you would die for your country. Whether anyone in the country would die for your country. Let's be honest here. A layer of snow, a layer of granite, a layer of snow. What you think lies under the snow. What you think lies. Not done. No. That was just me having trouble with the pages. Whether you think white on white is a state of mind, or blue on blue, or green on green. Whether you think there is a state of mind. How many clothes you have to take off before you can make love. This, I think, is important. The undoing of buttons, the gradual shedding of one color after another. It leads to the belief that what you see is not what you get. Whether there are preliminaries, hallways, vestibules, basements, furnaces, Chesterfields, silences between sentences, between pieces of furniture, parasites in your eyes, drinkable water. Whether there has ever been an invading army. Whether if there were an invading army, you would collaborate. Poor boy, you'd say, he looks cold standing out there and he's only 20. From his point of view, this must be hell. A fur coat is what he needs, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a warm body. Whether, on the contrary, you'd slit his throat in his sleep or in yours, I ask you. So, you are a nice person. You would behave well. What you mean by behaving well. When the outline of a man whose face you cannot see appears at your bedroom window, whether you would shoot. If you had a gun, that is. Whether you would have a gun. That's the end. So now I'm going to do the nicer poem, also chosen by Carolyn. Variation on the word sleep. I would like to watch you sleeping, which may not happen. I would like to watch you sleeping. I would like to sleep with you, to enter your sleep as its smooth, dark wave slides over my head, and walk with you through that lucent, wavering forest of blue-green leaves with its watery sun and 3 moons, towards the cave where you must descend, towards your worst fear. I would like to give you the silver branch, the small white flower, the one word that will protect you from the grief at the center of your dream, from the grief at the center. I would like to follow you up the long stairway again and become the boat that would row you back carefully, a flame in 2 cupped hands, to where your body lies beside me and you enter it as easily as breathing in. I would like to be the air that inhabits you for a moment only. I would like to be that unnoticed and that necessary.
Beautiful. On behalf of the trustees, the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you, Carolyn, and Margaret, congratulations. I can't think of anyone who deserves this award more than you, so congratulations. And now Anne Michaels is going to introduce and sit with the Canadian First Book winner, Don Macdonald. So, Anne. Where is she?
I also want to add my thanks for that incredible conversation to Margaret and Carolyn. It was just wonderful. And Carolyn mentioned Margaret's A Paper Boat, her collected poems, and I've been reading and rereading this book for many months. It's an extraordinary volume. I really urge you to read it. It is not only the story of a life and the times of a life and the body over decades, it is also the story of eras. It is our story. It is these times. And it really is a remarkable collected poems. And I am very, very pleased to be able to be talking with Don Macdonald, the winner of the 2025 Canadian First Book Prize, for her book, Northerny, published by the University of Alberta Press. Dawn lives in Whitehorse, Yukon, where she grew up. She studied applied math and physics at university, and her summer student project in space physics, she studied numerical modeling of the Northern Lights. She has been published in Antigonus Review, Canadian Literature, The Fiddlehead, Literary Review of Canada, Malahat Review, and others. Don MacDonald's debut collection, Northerny, possesses a powerful vitality of thought and language that both locates and dislocates, that scolds, scalds, ruptures, mends. Her poems swerve, evading expectation, and pierce with uncompromising acuity. This is a Canadian North we've never read before. The closing words of Northerny are not the end, but the and. This is a book that continuously identifies the and. MacDonald insists that true diversity must include those who are absent. Northerny is an extremely exciting debut. Please welcome the winner of this year's Canadian First Book Prize, Don MacDonald.
You know, Margaret Atwood is a bit of a tough act to follow. As is Anne Michaels. I am so thankful to be here with you today in Toronto. And being in Ontario, it felt appropriate to start with the piece that begins, "Look at how we didn't know how to live, because only Ontario possesses the secret of right life." Look how we lived, how we slept over and stayed out and went out with each other and let the stoners cast the stones they could lay hands on behind the school, between the forest and the garbage cans. And we laid on hands. We hangmanded and guessed the wrong letters, and it was more, or love. It was in our hands. We were all cheap gloves and frostbite. We were smokers. We learned typing because it was the future. We were hands-on learners. We went outside at lunch and stared into the dishpan sun like vitamin D was the only thing between us and getting a job. You know, I grew up in the Yukon in a very rustic situation. No electricity, no running water. And of course that means an outhouse. And you guys, I cannot believe that I won a prize for a book that talks so much about the outhouse. That is the topic of this next poem, which is titled Wasp Summer. Like us, the wasps made paper to package pain. They hung their sting-centric disco ball from the roofline of the outhouse. We tried to blend our lives, our shit, their venom. We leveraged a can of old spray paint in the rear guard action. Neon green wasps lumped the walls. Like us, wasps stop moving if their respiratory systems are impaired. These functions cross the phyla: respiration, digestion, excretion, reproduction, habitat selection, and modification. The outhouse kept our shit away from home. Some people have no manners and no sense. Move in on your shit, punish you for coming back and making more. The wasp decor will likely not catch on. The paint is remnant of that summer's war. Splotches are ugliness to us, death to the other. We cannot live together. We put it on paper and do not feel better. The sting connects us, haunch to haunch. You know, when people talk about the landscapes of the North, they often use words like magical. In fact, at one point, the Yukon tourism slogan was the magic and the mystery. And I do believe that our sense of the magical comes out of our experiences with the natural world. And I guess I'm sort of talking around that in this next piece, which is titled Charts. Fox troops the tracks. What would be his sign? Are animals born under houses? Who has a thought to give for love, would trade a calcium channel for a bit of soft bread across your tongue? For the tongue, for the ball of your thumb. Night struggles home, dragging its blanket over its head and sighing for the sympathy of the field mice, to try to get a little kindness out of the odd ant or grub, out of things that root and skitter, and as a rule do not harbor the hot hope of dark, or pat its head, or abjure it to be okay. We all want what we need from the one who can't. This time of year, our boots lack purchase, and we fail to grip the ground. Feet fly, arms flail. We are born into houses, and we home to the handmade, as down a compass slope slides the pigeon, the tern, those magnet-minded. We want to know what a month will hold, in the newspaper, in twelfths, in our pants pockets, in a fold of dough, in writing this time. Now, an experience that I don't think is specific to the North, but I think rural children in many places may find themselves with access to an unregulated waste management facility. Listen, all kids love to play at the dump. I have no sister, but the trash is flesh to me. We all have normal dreams of empty roll-on deodorant. I have no brother, yet I'm wearing cast-off shoes. Kids like it. It's a chicken bone graveyard. Each one could be the finger joint of the gone twin. Now, I'm watching this clock counting down, and it seems like I'm coming to the end of my time a little early. Do I continue all my prepared pieces, or? Okay. When you pick up a book with a title like Northerny, you may be looking to learn a few facts and statistics about the North and the Yukon, and this book is chock full of those. In particular, things like the fact that every Yukoner owns the 1979 Encyclopedia Britannica. Every Yukoner grew up drinking home brew. Every Yukoner has tried hitching the backyard chickens to the kick sled as a labor-saving mode of transportation. Every Yukoner has died of a fentanyl overdose. Every Yukoner sells ice to every other Yukoner. Every Yukoner glows in the solar wind. Every Yukoner votes for their best friend in the by-elections. And every Yukoner knows how to build a shelter out of egg cartons, parkas, and tax dollars. Every Yukoner drives a 1988 Oldsmobile. Every Yukoner sleeps sweet at the wheel. And finally, I'll finish off with the first poem in the book, and it is called First Things. This doesn't have to go in order. That's the first thing. I looked inside an egg, poked and blown pristine, made clean by the passing of its own slime. Inside was a cathedral, upturned chalice, clean as my own eye. A hole is a thing to gather light. The sun's blown its particles apart in order to glow through this one dead egg. This doesn't have to go in order. Crack, then slime, or slime first, then the egg, whole in your hand. Blown glass, a trinket, a gift, a thing easily given. Riddle wrapped up inside, cased, laid, brooded, clucked upon, clean as a whistle. An egg's a thing with feathers, but order of operations applies. A flashlight shone clean through the inside, illuminates outline, diagram, edges blown. A real chicken nugget, down over bone, clean tucked tail and rolled. Egg over easy, it looks easy. Asleep, unblown, no peep nor crack. First things first, all in order, round inside. I once saw a bird born inside out, heart pumping on down chest, a thing that lived in egg, but once born, died, thrown and blown away. To the white bowl of the sink I went to clean my hands after. Last things follow first. Hygiene, order. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, and congratulations, Dawn. I hope to see you one day up on the stage as one of the 5 shortlisted. Next, we're going to have a reciting of a poem by a student from Poetry and Voice et les Voix de la Poésie. Now, this organization invites students to come up on stage and with just a microphone, no notes, and recite by memory poetry in front of judges and a paid audience. Something that would normally put the fear of God in most adults. And the organization has grown dramatically over the last 2 years. We're in 2,000 schools across Canada in every province, and we estimate that 360,000 poems have been memorized since we started. Now, these students graduating are becoming the ambassadors to poetry. Why? Because they get it. They understand that poetry is the essence of language, of the beauty of language, that poetry is the music and imagination of language. And they will become the future readership of Canadian poetry. And they will ensure that poetry remains in the mainstream of our cultural lives. So let's listen to Isabella Torres Rangel from All Saints High School in Calgary. She's going to recite a poem for us, and I think you'll be impressed. Isabella.
Lake Michigan, Scene 3 by Daniel Brzezinski. The bodies are on the beach, and the bodies keep breaking. And the fight is over, but the bodies aren't dead. And the mayor keeps saying, I will bring back the bodies. I will bring back the bodies that were broken. The broken bodies speak slowly. They walk slowly onto a beach that hangs over a fire, into a fire that hangs over a city, into a city of immigrants, of refugees, of dozens of illegal languages, into a city where every body is a border between one empire and another. I don't know the name of the police officer who beats me. I don't know the name of the superintendent who orders the police officer to beat me. I don't know the name of the diplomat who exchanged my body for oil. I don't know the name of the governor who exchanged my body for chemicals. The international observers tell me I'm mythological. They tell me my history has been wiped out by history. They look for the barracks, but all they see is the lake and its grandeur, the flowering gardens, the flourishing beach. The international observers ask me if I remember the bomb that was dropped on my village. They ask me if I remember the torches, the camps, the ruins. They ask me if I remember the river, the birds, the ghosts. They say, find hope in hopefulness, find life in deathlessness. Locate the proper balance between living and grieving. I walk on the lake and hear voices. I hear voices in the sand and wind. I hear guilt and shame in the waves. I have my body when others are missing. I have my hands when others are severed. I hear the children of Chicago singing. We live in the blankest of times.
Thank you, Isabella. That was impressive. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the time when it is time to announce the winner of this year's Griffin Poetry Prize. And I'm going to ask Nicolás to come up and tell us who the winner is.
Oh, this is the awful bit. So first of all, on behalf of this year's judges, congratulations to the Griffin family, the organisation, to Ruth and to Chloe and everyone, and to the board for 25 years of this remarkable prize, which has done so much for poetry in Canada and poetry around the world. So we read, almost 600 books, and there was a kind of an incredible congruence, an incredible overlap with the judges. We all arrived and we had basically the same long list. So that was easy. We got 10 and that was fine. Then there's a wee bit more complicated to get down to 5, but we got that and it was okay again, and there was a lot of overlap. And you saw the quality of the shortlist. I think we knocked it out of the park. But the winner, a little bit more complicated again. It's fair to say that at one point in discussions, every single book on the shortlist seemed to be about to be the winner. So they're all winners in general, but not specifically. So specifically, in the end, we decided, and it was unanimous, to award the 2025 Griffin Prize to Durs, Grünbein and Karen Leeder.
Congratulations to both of you. Do you want to say a few words or just take the money and run?
So my first words are, really? Really? And then, thank you, Karen. Because I'm only here because of her translation, I guess. Will you say a few words? Say a few words.
Well, I really didn't expect this. I wish I'd prepared. But I think the few words must include extraordinary thanks to Scott and the Griffin family for making such an extraordinary thing happen for 25 years. Really amazing. So thank you. Then to all of his team who've been amazing and looked after all of us. And then to, it was an extraordinary honour to be on a platform with so many fine poets, all of whom could have won this prize. And should have won this prize, so thank you to them, and to the trustees who've been looking after us. To Seagull Press, Naveen, Bishan, Seoni, and Sunandini, a tiny press in Calcutta who have an extraordinary big heart and are making really exciting things happen in translation. To my great friend Ian Galbraith, always an inspiration, but above all, and finally, to Durs Grünbein, who is an extraordinary great world poet who I'm honoured to translate. And more than that, he's generous with his comments, but then leaves me alone to do it, which is what every translator wants. Rilke said translators were the bees of the invisible. And by that, he'd said it in a letter to his translator, his Polish translator, Witold Hulewicz. And he meant at once poets, but also translators. And poets and translators are both translating, it seems to me. But the translators are the little bees who often get forgotten. And one of the extraordinary things about this prize is that it also honours them. And so on behalf of the bees, thank you very much indeed.
I'm not sure about my English, but I would say one thing. I was so impressed by the talk with Margaret Atwood, and especially by her poems. I really didn't know before. If I would have known before these poems, I would have kneeled to her. Because really, sometimes I think the prose writers have another ability to focus things in poetry. So I mix it up now because I don't know what in the brains of all us literaries is going on. So I myself writing prose as well sometimes, but I know this is kind of in different chambers of the brain. But in her case, I realized immediately that these lines were so concentrated, focused on, in that case, very important historical, political things. She was just talking about borders or definitions of space, what we all have. I once wrote a poem about the little nations because I dreamed of being from a little nation. Germany is a rather big nation. That's a problem. I think we are just 80 million now. And we are in the middle of this continent. And, you know, I just should just explain this. The thing with my button is, it's not only for Ukraine. You should know that. This is now a war on Europe. It's a war on Europe. And if we are not stand together within Europe, could be that one day this continent will vanish in its old form. So, well, I hope poetry is as well a support to ideas of democracy, humanity, whatever. That's actually my training with poetry. That's why I am writing poetry.
There's one quick comment, and that is Margaret Atwood is first and foremost a poet.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. The bar will remain open while the poets sign books. Thank you for coming. See you next year, and good night.